What's going on, guys? It's Will here with another video in the library right now. Today I'm going to be showing you how to flow. So this is one of the most important techniques of any debate. It's how you are going to be organizing your notes, and it's going to really structure your rebuttals. So as you can see, I have two fake pieces of paper here. First thing you want to do, I mean, there are some other ways to flow, but I usually like to get two pieces of paper, at least just 8.5 by 11, if not 8.5 by 14, which is like, I think it's called legal paper. You can buy that at any store. It makes it a lot easier, especially once you get more experience and people start making more arguments that aren't as easy to write down quickly. So, first thing you want to do is take one of these flows. This is going to be the F. Okay, well, my pen isn't working. This is the F flow, and then this is the neg flow. So all these arguments on the left here are going to be ones that are made in response to the AF case, and then all the ones on this right piece of paper are arguments that are in response to the neg case. You'll see how it works as we get into it. So for this flow, we're going to want to draw 4 lines to divide it in fifths. So I'm not going to draw it all the way just for the sake of time, but you would extend it all the way down. Yeah. And then you want to label the speeches accordingly. So like this is the 1AC, this is the 1NR, which is going to be their responses to your AF case. This is your 1AR, which is going to, and this is specifically the section of the 1AR where you respond to their attacks on your case. Then this is going to be their 2NR, then your 2AR. And if you're neg, this will just be your opponent's case. Your responses to their case. It's just you use it every time, regardless of what side you are on. If that makes sense. So let's pretend I'm neg and my opponent's reading a case. So what you want to do, keep in mind a few things when you're flowing. You want to keep it evenly spaced out so it's easy for you to read, and you also want to use shorthand terms to make it as easy as possible to record everything down in time. And this really comes with practice, and I'm sure you guys will get better at it as you go along. So let's just get into it. So let's say they affirm, and they're gonna like read a lot of things that might not be necessary. You don't have to write down every single thing they say. You just want to write down what's important. So say they are defining every single term in the resolution. There's no need to flow everything that they write down because, for example, you might agree with their definition of civil disobedience, or you might not. But if you think it's going to be important in the round, you might want to record it. So we'll say civil disobedience. For their definition, we'd abbreviate it CD, and then we'd write like a shorthand version of whatever they defined it as. Then they might go on to some key observations. They'd be like observation one, a true democracy has never existed, and like have a really stretched out sentence. You might want to just abbreviate that, like no true dem. And then I'd know for my rebuttal that I'd want to respond to an argument that there isn't a true democracy. Then they might have their value. This is where it gets a little bit less variable. You always want to flow their value as V with a colon and then just write whatever their value is. They might say morality. Okay, I can't spell that, but pretend that says morality. And then I like to do, if they provide any justification for their value, you might want to summarize those here. Many times they won't. Value criterion will be abbreviated VC. This might be I don't know. We'll say maximizing well-being. We might abbreviate it max WB. It's just an easy shorthand. And then some more justifications separated with dashes. And then they'll say like their first contention, when abbreviated at C1, like do the tagline. Don't make sure like as you're listening to what they're saying during the debate, you want to not like it's hard to explain. You don't want to just write down word for word. You want to always be writing with a little bit of delay so that in your brain you can synthesize what they're saying into like fewer words. And this will so that you're like listening to what they're saying while you're still synthesizing what you just heard from before, if that makes sense. And this is a skill that's kind of hard to learn, but it'll get a lot better with practice. Um, so you'd say like contention one, government, or I don't know, government change. What do I want? governmental reform. So I'd say like gov reforms. And then if they have like a subpoint, I'd say like subpoint A, subpoint B. Okay, we're not going to do a whole case, but it would follow this pattern. And then in their subpoint B, we'd write whatever tagline it is. We'd say just like they wanted to say specific legislation. I don't know. These aren't even arguments. Um, then they'd maybe have like sub arguments in this. Then they might have taglines of the cards they're reading or the evidence they're providing. So you would record the tagline here, and then this is kind of important when you're responding to specific pieces of evidence. You always want to catch the author, last name, and the date. So they'd say like, empirics show that civil disobedience is good like for legislative change. So I'd say like CD, civil disobedience leads to change, which is the claim of the card. Then they'd say like Collins 15, and I'd write down the name of the card, underline it, and then when they read the card, you really don't have to write down word for word what the card is saying. You just want to outline key warrants. So you just insert a warrant here, and read like things that are actually important within the evidence. If there are like statistics within that. And as you see, this isn't a full case. There would be many more cards, and you would repeat that pattern for the rest of it. Now, once you get more efficient, you will actually be doing this step as you flow their case simultaneously. But for now, just focus on getting all their arguments down. And then during prep time, what you're going to want to do is draw arrows that correspond to all their arguments and come up with responses, whether it be specific pieces of evidence. If you want to be like, okay, well, my evidence 16 card says this, it contradicts whatever they're saying, or etc. You'd have that. Or you could just write analytical responses that just like come from common sense or logic or your blocks. So you just want to draw arrows, and you can have several arrows going to one argument. Just make sure it's straight and make sure there's room to write down succinctly what you want to argue. And that will be like what you do during your prep time. Okay. And just remember, for the sake of this, I'm negative. So we'll go ahead. Now the AF has already spoken. I've come up with my responses for my 1NR, but now it's time to read my negative case. So at this point, what I already would have done is pre-float my whole case. So I have my contentions and whatnot, my subpoints, and you get the point. But you want to go in to a tournament with, I'd say, at least you want to go with 3 pre-flows of each side. So you want to have your cases summarized in this way as if your opponent was going to flow your case, because then you'll be able to connect what response they make against your case to the arguments that respond. So then you've read your 1NC, you've read that, you've read your 1NR on the left here. You don't really flow cross-ex just because it's usually just used for strategic purposes, but doesn't really, new arguments aren't usually advanced. It's just like a reiteration of whatever arguments you already have. So we're going to assume that cross-ex has ended, and now it's time for the 1AR. And by the way, this is also the 1AR. Okay, that's N. This is really messy, I'm so sorry. Okay, so the 1AR might either start by responding to your case, so they'd start on this right side of the flow, or they might actually start by defending their own case from the arguments you made on the left side of the floor. But either way, we're going to assume that they started by responding to your arguments. So for every argument they make, you want to follow the same pattern, draw an arrow, whatever their response is, and whatnot. And then you can also, as you'll get better at this as you go, come up with responses to their responses, defending your case as they're still saying these arguments. So I put maybe a response here. And then let's say this becomes important. The reason why you want to know what they've answered is because, let's say they respond to your contention 1. They have 3 arguments against it that are like pretty good, and they're like, you think they're winning on your contention 1, but however they've run out of time and they don't have any responses. There's nothing here on either of your subpoints in your contention 2. What you can do then is draw an arrow from whichever arguments you want into the next speech over your opponent's speech. And this illustrates like an extension, which means that they have not responded to your arguments. So I would extend this. I would extend this and reiterate you can just write extend if that keyword helps you to remember to reiterate the claim, warrant, and impact of whatever you initially said in your first speech. And you don't have to do this for entire contentions because oftentimes your opponents, especially as you get more experience, won't be dropping entire contentions. They'll probably be like not responding to specific cards. So we'll just say like Colin 16 is, I don't know why I'm so big on that card today. I don't know. We'll say that's a card that you have in your case, and they've responded to other cards in this contention, but they haven't responded to the specific piece of evidence. You might extend this card and then explain why it has like big implications for the round. And you basically this follows the same pattern. Um, I know it might be a little bit confusing. Feel free to text me or email me with questions. But this is basically how it should basically break down. And by the end of the round, what you're going to have is a breakdown of what arguments were made and how they interacted, and which arguments were answered, which responses to arguments were answered, which responses to those responses were answered. You'll have like a comprehensive picture. And just a quick note for the last speech, you might want to list your voting issues. So these won't necessarily correspond or be responses to specific arguments because they're just like general overviews of what went well in the round and why you think you should be winning. So in the 2AR column, I might allocate a short space under here or just somewhere on my page that, like, because a lot of times you won't use up all the space on your flow. Sorry. And I would just write out my voting issues and I number them 1, 2, 3, and maybe just write the name of the voting issue and then with a dash under it about why it matters or like what aspects of that issue I think I'm winning. So that should be a basic tutorial. We will practice this a lot in class, but until then, I think this should give you a good idea of how to flow, how to pre-flow, and I guess why flowing is important. So yeah, thanks for watching.